the passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
This brings us to the first item of the meeting is the approval of the official agenda.
Mr. Mayor and Board, a number of items for your consideration for possible placement on a consent agenda, although a number of items are not suitable for placement on the consent. On page 3, item G, Roman numeral 10 it is, item G. Roman numeral 11, airport, the single item there, the pay request. Page 4, Roman numeral 11C, City Clerk's Office, number 2. D, courts, items 1 and 2. Page 5, personnel, all items listed under personnel with the notation on item 3 that Melissa Luckett will be hired in the position of independent contractor. This is not a city position as such, but independent contractor for that same project.
Mr. Chairman, while you articulate that, and I just want to make sure I further understand that both of these positions for Starkville Motion are independent contractors, won't be any cost to the city with no insurance, Social Security, Medicare. Is that right, Mr. Boyd?
That's correct. All of the costs will be accumulated and handled under the grant.
Paid for out of the grant.
That's good. That's fine. Very good.
So all 8 items there. Page 6, the police department item and the 3 public service items. And unless you have items you would like to remove from that list or items you want to recommend being added to the consent agenda, I would move approval of the agenda with these items transferred to the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and second on the approval of the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Brings us to approval of the board minutes of June the 3rd.
Mayor and Board move approval of June 3rd, 2008 minutes as provided.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Approved. Brings us down to announcements and comments by the mayor and any Board of Alderman members. Congratulations to Brett Coker. Are you here tonight? Yeah, excellent. We got first in the state, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. We appreciate your good, hard work in regard to that. Thank you very much on behalf of the city.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd like to in turn recognize the 3 guys that work with me.
Okay, very good.
Gary Bell, Jeremiah Marshall, and Gary Ward. Between them, they got 60 years of experience. Without them, I would have never won the award, so I'd like them to be recognized.
Thank you, Joe. Brings us down to citizens' comments. What?
Department of Health for the water system. Purpose for.
There were 2 items, Mayor, in that previous one.
Oh, okay. There was a perfect score from the Mississippi Department of Health for 2008, which is very good. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, that's, Scott, you want to stand up? Scott Thomas is our chief operator for the water system, and this is the first time the city of Starkville's drinking water system has ever achieved a perfect score from the Department of Health. There's 3 areas in which you're evaluated, and this is done yearly, technical, managerial, and financial. And under each of those topics, there's 5 items that you're inspected on, and we achieved this perfect score on every one of them. And a lot of that is credit goes to Scott, his two operators, Dennis and Geodis. So I wanted to just recognize.
Thank you, Scott.
thank
We
Scott.
appreciate it. Now, I think we're ready for citizen comment. This is the opportunity those in the audience here have 3 minutes, no longer, to say whatever you'd like to say about the city or whatever. We now open the floor up for that.
Good evening to the mayor, board, Vice Mayor Perkins. The citizens just have two concerns that is being very frightening. The electric department is a very small place, and when the students come back, we just jam in, and it's hot, and we definitely want no one to fall out or pass out. That's very frightening for the electric department. The police department, we feel like that paying someone else for our own responsibility, like that we are helping them and we're not helping ourselves. Like, that's very frightening. Those are two concerns of citizens.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else that has concerns? If not, we'll move on to public appearances. The first public presentation, Joan, I think y'all up with the Heritage Museum.
Ms. Thorne.
Yes.
I think this was I think you have one of these sheets in your packet, and for those of you who have not been by to see it, we want to use this few minutes to tell you how much we have done with your money and the money that we have acquired from other areas. We've had lots of visitors and lots of volunteers, but right now our museum is closed and we are working on the inside of it. So why don't you tell them what we're doing?
Well, we've gotten the interior all painted, finally recarpeted, which was the city's point. We're now working on redoing the exhibits, and we've had consultation from professionals in Jackson because we are part of a study to help small museums, and we're very fortunate. We're one of 6 in Mississippi and one of 48 in the country to be able to do this. So we're having expert opinions and expert guidance on this. All volunteer work, of course. We're meeting every Thursday morning at 9:30 to work on the exhibits. We've broken up into teams to take care of various areas. Sure would like to have the Board of Alderpersons stop by sometime, because I know Richard's seen the museum, but I don't think anybody else has. And this is part of the city, part of the county, but part of the city. You're all looking to the future, we're looking to the future, but we're also capturing the history of Starkville. One of the exhibits, the one the fellows is really working hard on, is Cool Papa Bell, and that is going to be really good. We're going to have a children's corner, kids' corner that the Kiwanis Club gave us some money for. So we're working hard, and I want to tell you, I think that as far as good utilization of city money, the museum is probably one of your better users of the money, and I would very much hope that you'll consider, I know you're broke and all that, but so are we. I'd like for you to consider our request of $4,500, which is $1,000 more than we have gotten in the last 3 years. You folks did the carpeting. You still have to do the French drain and wrap the ductwork underneath the museum, which is helping us air condition the outdoors instead of the inside. But I think that is something you agreed to do 2 or 3 years ago, so that should not impact what we're asking for this year. So please consider our request. I think we're very economical and you're getting a lot for your money.
We also plan, hoping that we will have the tourists come in with when we get our museum, so that not just tourists but the local people. You know, it really offends me for people to say, "I didn't know there was a museum here." It really does, and I'm an old lady, and it just shouldn't be offended. That's not nice. All
Okay.
Mayor.
right, that's it.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I've been the city's liaison to y'all for about the last 2.5 years now, and if you haven't seen what it looked like before, the change has been absolutely phenomenal as far as
Thank you.
the way that it looks inside structurally, the way the setup is. It's nice, it's clean, and y'all have done a really good job.
And we've used every little resource, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts.
Everybody.
and
Football
Thank you,
players.
ladies.
and-
We
Football
appreciate it.
Yes, Mayor.
Yeah.
Joan and Mary have spent hours and hours and hours, along with a multitude of other volunteers, including the master gardeners who have helped landscape. They deserve a hand, too.
Thank you.
Our next appearance is by the Center for Advanced Vehicular Systems, and I think I see a gentleman back there representing y'all. Hey, Marshall, how are you tonight? How are you tonight?
Great. Mike Manzola from
Yes, Mike.
CAVS. I want to thank you all for making a few minutes of your time to listen to our request. My name is Mike Manzola. I am a professor of electrical and computer engineering at Mississippi State University and a member of the research team at the Center for Advanced Vehicular Systems in the research park just north of campus. I'd also, Mr. Mayor here has already recognized my colleague, Marshall Mullen. You want to stand up, Marshall? No?
No.
Okay. Marshall and I work very closely at CAVS. And I know some of you are probably aware that he was the faculty advisor to the Challenge X, MSU Challenge X team, which has gotten a tremendous amount of wonderful press for our city and our campus lately, based on their national championship in the area of hybrid electric vehicle technology. And what I'm here to ask you about today is to formally request your partnership in a proposal that Marshall and I are submitting to the, our plan on submitting to the Environmental Protection Agency in the very near future. In fact, the submission deadline is tomorrow. And we had the fortunate opportunity about 2 weeks ago to speak with Alderman McLaurin and the mayor and Ms. Lynn Spruill about the opportunity to partner with us on our proposal. And I have brought with me on a single piece of paper a very simple explanation for all of your benefit of what I think we have agreed to in the last 2 weeks and what we are now formally requesting your approval to be a partner with us on that proposal. And that will basically entail a letter of endorsement, which has already been drafted and is ready for the mayor's signature. And it is my request that you approve that endorsement today. On this piece of paper, you'll see some quick facts about our proposal. I just want to very briefly go over that with you. As I mentioned, we are planning on building on the success of Challenge X by proposing to the EPA a partnership with the City of Starkville to field test a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle on a city law enforcement vehicle, police car. The city uses a very common vehicle, the Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor, which I can tell you is utilized all over this country. It's a very popular vehicle for law enforcement. And we believe that the EPA solicitation, known as EPA OAR CPBD 0804, which is requesting cost-effective approaches for the reduction in carbon dioxide emissions from all sources. We believe a program to convert one of your vehicles to a PHEV and then field test it for 2 years in a partnership with one or more of your police officers is responsive to that solicitation. As you can see, our objectives are to field test the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle technology. And our expectation is to see a significant increase in fuel economy and a consequent reduction in carbon dioxide emissions from the vehicle, as well as reduction in other air pollutants. We are proposing to the EPA a 3-year program, and we principally would like to involve one or more of your officers as a team, with our CABS engineers to help us test this technology in the field and get feedback. There is very little additional expectation on the city or the police officer. We're not asking them to do any engineering or any maintenance or anything like that. Indeed, the new equipment will be maintained by CABS as part of the proposal. We are principally asking that the police officer or officers that team with us operate the converted vehicle in normal city business, and then assist us in collecting data on the performance of that vehicle. And then a very important aspect of the project is outreach and public relations, because in order to achieve the EPA's objectives, and as well as the possibility of future national policy in the form of reduction in carbon emissions, it's important that this technology be tested and then be expanded into fleets across the state and across the country. And we believe the particular approach that we're taking will be very attractive, and that's something that we need to educate others on. And one of the features of our proposal is to ask the police officer who's a partner with our engineers to join us in the outreach and public relations efforts, because we believe that'll be extremely effective in bringing other municipalities and other law enforcement agencies into a program like this. With that, I will ask for any questions.
Questions from board members?
No real questions. It sounds like an excellent program. Do you already have the letter of recommendation provided? Because I didn't see it.
It's in front of you. It's requested your
This letter goes along with the grant proposal, I believe.
That is correct.
And while they're looking at that, I'd like to congratulate both of you gentlemen here tonight on your Challenge X, in which you were the tops in the United States 2 years, I believe, of the 4-year period, and 16 other major universities were competing with some pretty big names involved with those other universities, and y'all came out on top, I believe. You were top dog. Yeah.
We're very proud of our students who were
So I'd like to give them a hand.
Mr. Mayor and Board, this proposal, in effect, puts Starkville on a cutting edge of participation in testing of technology. If successful, will mean some major benefits, not only for the city, but for municipalities throughout the country. If unsuccessful, it eliminates this possibility as a technology to which municipalities can turn throughout the country. So we're taking a step forward, and it would be my pleasure to move that the city approve participation with CABS in this particular project, and that the mayor be authorized to sign this relatively simple letter of commitment to accompany tomorrow's grant application. I assume y'all may have work to do on that tonight or something. So,
you're a very perceptive man.
So it's my pleasure to move this particular collaborative effort.
Second.
We have a motion to second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Next presentation is by Mr. Herman Ashford, requesting a burn permit. I saw him earlier. There he is. Come up and ask for your request.
All right. I'm Herman
Thank you,
Ashford.
ladies.
Herman Ashford. And we're getting ready to start clearing for Oasis Resort and Suite on Highway 25. And I'm asking the board for a request for a barn permit for the property on Highway 25. We understand that we're gonna be monitoring the wind and all the smoke. We're gonna try to make it go south once the wind is blowing south, if the wind is still. So I'm asking for a request for a barn permit.
You're on the edge of the city limits, aren't you?
In the city limits, on the edge.
On the edge of it.
On the edge, right at the edge.
Any alderman have a request? Roger, have you reviewed this with Herman?
Yes, sir.
I have. Mr. Ashford's site is on the southwest corner of the city. He and I spoke several times about it, and I've been out and looked at the site, and it will easily conform to our new burn requirements.
And you'll monitor that, as is usually the case with these.
Okay.
Is it going to pose any issues with the airport and location in relation to the airport, FAA-wise?
It's more than 1,500 feet.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Mayor and Board, I would move approval of the request.
Second.
We have a motion to second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. This brings us down to our public hearings. We have a series of 3 or 4 public hearings. Our first one is the second public hearing on the proposed repeal and replacement of the animal control ordinance.
Do you need to provide information?
There was?
You already did on the first one. We have no comments. I call the second public appearance, hearing to close. We'll move to the first public hearing on the repeal and replacement of the no smoking ordinance. And this is to include the hangars, I believe, at the airport. Is that not correct? Is the only-
All the municipal
All.
airport property.
All the municipal airport properties. Any comments? We already got it in place. I'm sure that most people will be in favor of extending that to the airport municipal properties.
You would think so.
Yeah. Okay, there goes your chance. The first public hearing is now closed. We'll get to the public hearing that everybody's here for. That's the public hearing on the repeal and replacement of the storm water control ordinance. This is the first public hearing. Edward, do you have a few comments in regard to what changes have been made? And I see a lot of builders, contractors, real estate people here tonight, and I'm sure that they're very interested in this one.
I won't take up too much time so they can have their...
Mr. Mayor, before Edward gets started, just a note on the table tonight is a replacement page for the animal control ordinance, which updates a measurement in that. So just to note that to go with your animal control ordinance. Thank you, Edward.
It was like 6 feet, I think, changed from 10 feet to 6 feet.
Correct.
Go ahead, Edward.
Sure. On the stormwater management ordinance, this is the ordinance we've had in effect since 2006. 2 main purposes of this repeal and replacement is to further define the applicability portion of it. There was some conflict in our language in the ordinance, and one aim is to clarify that. The other is a section 9 of under or paragraph 9 under section B, which talks about stream protection and buffering. An item that will most likely be required of the Starkville under the new phase 2, which would be in 2010, as mandated by the MDEQ. This is just something that for the board to consider, something that's probably coming down the line, and just put it in there for their consideration if you so choose. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Why don't you go to the two areas in there that will be controversial with most of these people waiting
The two, on the applicability, we changed that paragraph to now include requiring stormwater management and detention on any single-family residential of 2 acres or more, or having 50% or greater impervious surface. Also, as it's worded now, apply to plan unit developments, multifamily, or non-residential developments, as well as additions, expansions of existing developments of 1/2 acre or more. And on the limitation of stormwater, is basically saying that they should not allow any increase from the 25-year design storm as it would in its current state.
Do we have anyone that'd like to make statements pertaining to these measures in the audience? Have all of you in the audience had an opportunity to look at these changes? Developers, builders, et cetera? Again, this is the first public hearing. We'll have another one. Yes.
I'm Mike Rozier with Pine Belt Incorporated, and appreciate this opportunity. We're a developer, one of the developers for Dollar General for the state of Mississippi. We have developed the previous store in Starkville and very successful, and I think it's been an asset to the community. We would like to develop another one on Highway 182, and we have run into the stumbling block with this ordinance, and we submitted our plans originally to the city, went before the department heads, they all made comments, came back, and with a second review with the department heads, all department heads signed off except for the city engineer. Had several comments, most of them minor, and can easily be corrected and have been corrected on our plans, with the exception of stormwater prevention. And the ordinance states that if we are under a 3-acre site, according to the ordinance in 2006, and a 2-acre where it's less than 50% impervious runoff, that we do not have to adhere to stormwater prevention. And Mr. Edward had told me at that time that it was conflicting, that the ordinance was conflicting, and he directed me that we go by what he informed me at that time. The city attorney said that the city needed to adopt, and I think since then, from what I've been told, is that y'all have repealed that ordinance, and basically it says anything half-acre or larger. You know, what this does is once we are in the process of developing this property, we've submitted plans, have obtained a lease. Now we have to go back and reevaluate, recalculate our hydraulic calculation, and not only has it caused a great delay in our project, I'm fixing to have to spend several $1,000s. I've had to hire my civil engineer to recalculate, do the hydraulic calculations. We're spending anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000 there. I've got to even take some additional property that we own next door and put a open storm retention pond, which, as most of you know, retention ponds are usually not very pretty, and then a maintenance issue and an issue with mosquitoes and snakes and so forth there, which could use, if we didn't have to do that, we could develop the adjoining property for another office building or some other retail that could go there, which would benefit the city also. So bottom line, if we got to go back and we got to do a stormwater on a 1-acre site, is what we got, is that I've got to do underground drainage or I've got to do a retention pond. And we're looking at anywhere from a cost of $8,000 to $15,000, depending on which way we have to go, plus the delays that we've already occurred. And we work all over the state. I've built over 160 of these stores across the southeast, and we've had retention issues with other places, and we've addressed them, and there's not a problem. But it was in a very, very restricted drainage area, and here we don't have that. The site has been draining fine for numerous years. As far as we know, research back for the last 40 years, there wasn't a building on this site. Prior to that, I don't know, but you know, I just asked the board to consider what the consequences of this be if any commercial developer come into the city of Starkville and want to develop on a 1-acre tract at the expense that they've got to go through just to do this. There's numerous towns and cities in this state that we do not have to address this situation right here.
That's understood, but I think one of the things that he was talking, he's a very quiet speaker, that we're trying to get our city in compliance for 2 or 3 years from now, and that's the reason we're having a public hearing, to hear objections to these particular specific items that may be part of that. And the way I understand the stormwater ordinance, that previously we did have 1 acre, but then it contradicted itself, I think several paragraphs below, did it not, Edward?
That's right. It says no development shall be undertaken that increases the rate of certain.
So, and he raises a very good issue here. We're not particularly interested in being a city where we can fall under certain guidelines, and you go get your permit and so forth. All of a sudden, You can't get your permit because this contradicts. We can't get things done fast enough in this city in regard to this. This thing won't be enacted for, what? Another 2 or 3 weeks?
At least, because we have another public hearing in 2
We have to have another public
And it's
hearing
30
and other
days
issues
after
like
that.
this. How long have you been waiting for this building permit to be issued?
I started the process about 2 months ago, and at the last hearing I went to, I was told to come back with the drawings with hydraulic calculations and retention, that's the way it was gonna be. That was the word that I was told. There's no words, this is how we're gonna do it. It's contradicting, but this is the paragraph we're gonna go by. If you look at the first paragraph of that 2006 ordinance, it strictly states 2 to 3 acres, depending on which one you fall in. Then the next paragraph, but it says if applicable. The next paragraph says all construction projects, if it's applicable. My opinion, we're not applicable because we're under that 2-acre project. We're under that 2-acre site. But yet, I was told, get your hydraulic calculation, bring your retention pond work back, and then we'll talk about a permit. That it wasn't a 2 or 3 week waiting period. This is the way it was gonna be. So that's got me in the limbo. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know what to do.
Mr. Mayor, just out of curiosity, may I ask the gentleman, where is this proposed location on 182?
It is east of Reed Road on the north side of 182.
Okay, and I think you were the gentleman that came back to us that presented the proposal down on now Louisville Street
Yes.
and Academy
Yes.
Road, and you did a great job in meeting the city's intentions on that. So hopefully we'll be able to accommodate you, because it's my personal opinion that we should do what we can to reasonably accommodate businesses and help economic development. We are looking at a proposed $292,000 million shortfall in our budget, and we need to be doing whatever we can reasonably do with our city to help increase revenue. So I'm very sympathetic with your concerns. Hopefully, our professional expert here, our engineer, and the board will find some reasonable way, if necessary and proper, to accommodate your request.
The store in Louisville Street is doing $1.2 million a year. The store on 182 is projected to do $1 million a year. So therefore, the city will gain revenue from it, no doubt.
Sales tax, if anything. Let me ask
Yes.
Ben a question. Ben, have we had previous people that came in with similar site preparations before this gentleman came in?
Yes, sir.
And did we grant them permission if it was less than 2 acres?
We did, but that, like Edward was saying, we were interpreting the code a little bit different than those before Edward came on board.
But for several years, we interpreted the code differently.
Yes, sir. We basically, like Mr. Rozier and the rest of the folks are going to say, look at the first section, if you got to where you're exempt, then read the rest of it. It's further down in the text where it says, any development which increases.
Do we have any of the sites presently brought before the city in order for this to be interpreted?
Don't believe so.
I think you do.
Oh, you mean currently or previously?
After this was exposed, do we have any additional ones that have been brought forward?
Yes, sir.
And are they being examined in regard to the same interpretation as this gentleman was subjected to?
Yes, sir. One of them is under the building department tonight for the pediatric clinic. One of them. We've got a few others that are currently undergoing review as well.
Well, I really have problems with all of a sudden changing things in the middle of the stream and denying people who have come up, spent a lot of money on these type of proposals, and not just because we have a different interpretation of what we had 2 months, 3 months ago, you deny it. And that can be problematic.
That's why we went to the board to ask for some guidance on how we need to interpret and apply that under the existing.
And if I heard everything right on the boards, some of the members of the board, they didn't want anything approved that had runoff. And I think we modified that. Is that not right?
That's right.
All right. It'd be left up to the board to do whatever they'd like to do. Now, here again, this is a public hearing. You voiced your opinion in regard to this. Your solution would be a different avenue altogether than just a public hearing.
I would like to go back to the previous ruling where we've done construction here and go by the previous ordinance that was in effect in 2006. When I had my first hearing with department heads, I had a 9-page item list of things I needed to correct on my plan. No problem. We went back and we corrected those to the best of our ability that I thought I had exactly right. All department heads signed off on the project the second time, with the exception of Mr. Kemp, and then I have 32 more items, and then it puts me on hold again. If we'd known this ordinance up front at the first hearing, we would have tried to correct it or address it then, and then when I go back, it tells me it's a conflicting clause in the ordinance, and then I find out 2 days after the next day after y'all's last board meeting, and was told that this ordinance had been amended, and I have to go by it. So I'm kind of, like I say, I'm caught in catch-22. I don't know which way to go. We're ready to go to work. We have corrected our plans with the exception of the stormwater runoff on all the items on the last hearing with the department heads, and ready to submit again with the exception of the stormwater runoff.
And so what I'm hearing tonight from our attorney is that this gentleman right here can't do anything but wait another weeks and weeks and weeks. Is that right?
No, you asked me how long it was going to take.
How long it's going to take? Is that, am I hearing
we're going to have
that?
another public hearing, and then it's probably 30 days after that before the
He's talking about before adoption of
Before
a new
adoption of the
ordinance.
ordinance. That's what you asked me.
Yeah.
What the gentleman is
So
talking
he's kind of
about
hung
is
in limbo in between.
As far as the ordinance goes, that's
Yeah,
not,
right.
that's what you asked me.
Well, that's,
The board's already interpreted what their intent was. They're asking, this is a change in the ordinance.
that's
What they're
correct.
being at, that's what the public hearing is
And
about
what this,
tonight.
well, that's right. And that's what I stated, is it not? That this is a public hearing?
No, you're
Is
asking
this-
about, is he gotta wait another, you're talking about something totally different. You asked me about the adoption of the ordinance, I gave you the timetable. Has nothing to do with his particular issue.
The hell it doesn't.
Well, that's my answer.
I
Sorry.
disagree with you, sir. It's got a lot to do with my
That's
issue.
what I said.
It's got me on hold. I
Well,
mean,
again, this is a public hearing, and you have an individual problem in regard to the stormwater runoff, okay? And that your issue would have to be taken up in a different situation other than public hearing. You're welcome to make your remarks in a public hearing, because this is a hearing in the adoption of a new stormwater runoff.
my only question, if I could ask this, do I fall under the ordinances that we adhered to in the past since '06, or do I sit back and wait till the ordinance to change?
Good question. Can you answer that, Mr. Attorney?
Mr. Kemp answered that the day after the last board meeting, when he told you what the intent of the board was.
No, he didn't tell me what the intent of the board.
I
He
thought
told
you
me it
said
had
he
been
did tell you
appealed.
what the intent of the board was.
Amended, I mean.
The ordinance hasn't been amended as of now. This is a proposed amendment. He told you, if I'm not mistaken, what you just said after the last board meeting, what the intent of the board as how they interpreted this ordinance. Is that not what he told you?
No, sir.
Okay. Then I misunderstood what you said.
I was told the day after y'all's last board meeting that it had been amended, and this was what we would have to adhere to.
Well-
And that's what I was told, so I'm.
No, it has not been
limbo.
amended as of yet. This is public hearing
That's what the
to
public hearing
amend it.
is about tonight, to amend it.
Do I submit my plans now again, or do I wait till another 60 days?
Can you answer that, Mr. Griffin? I don't mean to be putting you on the spot.
Well, that was.
But you are.
The reason we sought board guidance was how the intent, because the ordinance, the existing ordinance was enacted before both Edward Kemp and I came to work with the city. So we wanted to seek some clarification and.
So for all these years, what I'm asking the question, for all these years, it was totally interpreted in another light. Is that not correct?
Basically.
Mr. Mayor and Board, this is a particular development item that, while he's certainly free to express his opinion, because this is part of a public hearing on a proposed ordinance, the board might wish to give this whole matter some additional consideration when we get to the executive session portion of the agenda, since this is an item of potential litigation.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak on this thing? Yes, sir.
I'm Mike Henson, and I'm here speaking as the general contractor for a group of doctors. If y'all would please stand and introduce yourselves.
I'm Dr. Robert Kane. Dr. Paul Ruff.
And we find ourselves in almost an identical position that the previous speaker is in. We started this project on a particular piece of property, and my first trip to the planning committee, and excuse me if my terminology is not exactly right, and were informed that we would not fall under the interpretation of this ruling because of the size of our lot. From that, I proceeded to put together a package for this group of doctors and advise them to purchase a very expensive piece of property and put them together a budget on this project that would work. Well, after 2 to 3 meetings, trying to put together the package that they had requested, when we thought we were ready for the last meeting, and then we were informed, everything you've done is fine except now you have to meet these new standards. Well into the process of putting this together. And we're not talking here of time is of the essence because, but the big thing is we started this project with one understanding. And what the board has done by changing the interpretation, and guys, in the middle of our process, not at the beginning of it, we thought towards the end when we might be actually starting, has cost us thousands of dollars in engineering fees already and could possibly cost us tens of thousands of dollars by this new interpretation. Whether this will be a cost-effective project at this point, I don't know, because we still don't know for sure what we're going to have to do. What it certainly does, and I don't know if anybody's given any thought to this, fortunately enough, the group of people I'm working for probably can get whatever money it's going to take to do this. But there are a lot of people out there who are working off of borrowed money and are depending on an appraised value to do this, and borrowing a percentage of an appraised value. This doesn't show, and it's not going to show on the appraisal. So we've thrown tens and tens of thousands of dollars into a cost of a project, this one in particular, that is not going to be reflected in value of any sort. It adds absolutely no value to this property as far as what it's actually worth, what the appraised value of it would be, zero. So, you know, I guess what we're asking for maybe is relief here in the fact that we started with the best of intentions, with fully wanting to do what the city asked us. The problem is, after well into the project, money invested, the rules were changed. That's simple. And I guess in essence, we're looking for some kind of relief so we can get started with this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Jason Walker. I'm a landscape architect and I teach at Mississippi State. I would just like to say a couple quick words. I'll be very brief. Water management is going to be the key issue, resource management, for the next 50 years to 100 years in our country, and in Mississippi in particular. We are currently myself and other colleagues who are here are currently doing research that is funded through the Northern Gulf Institute and NOAA, looking at the relationship, the link between policies and water quantity and quality issues across the Northern Gulf of Mexico, from Louisiana to the Panhandle of Florida. And we are using a series of methods to evaluate the effectiveness of those policies in different municipalities and counties, and they're based on their ordinances of how effective those are in terms of dealing with water-related issues. We're using the Center for Watershed Protection, a national organization that studies water quality and water quantity issues as well, along with other methods. And what we are finding is that some places do it really well and some places do it very poorly. based on our findings, Starkville's existing ordinance is inadequate as part of meeting the MDEQ Phase 2 requirements. We would like to see, we are very much in favor of the repeal of the existing ordinance and a replacement with a new ordinance. And we would like to also add that in particular, the new ordinance is going to be a step in the right direction, but ultimately, it doesn't go far enough. Now, with respect to current situations that you're dealing with, I don't know how you handle that. But we're certainly in favor of repeal of the existing ordinance and replacement with an ordinance that's going to provide Starkville with a much better opportunity to manage water as we continue to grow. And it's very hard to put a value. We just heard a speaker earlier who said our water quality is very good right now in terms of drinking water. How do you put a price on that? What is the value added for clean drinking water? Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I call the first public hearing to a close. Thank you.
Mayor, could I add that copy of the revised ordinance on the website for anybody who would like to look at it?
All of you hear that? Edward doesn't speak as loud as I do.
A copy of the repealed and replaced ordinance on the website.
We have another public hearing on the amendment to the sprinkler ordinance. Basically, what that is to sprinkle hangars, I believe. Is that not right, gentlemen? Airport hangars?
It talks about a certain size that,
is there not a grace period that we could have put on the same for people?
could have put it still.
Jerked around.
It could have put it still, put this talk about it in executive session.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the reason I was saying that his issue was different. Yeah. I call the public hearing on amendment for sprinkler ordinance to a close. The next item is mayor's business. Is Leah here tonight? There she is. Come up here and have a seat. Talk to us a little bit about some of the proposed grant options that you have investigated.
Okay. You should have received in your packet, I believe, 4 grant opportunities that the city might choose to pursue. I just want to give you a little background on kind of how I arrived at some of these grants. I was asked, initially you approved me to research grant opportunities, and I was asked to spend a limited amount of time researching those, and came up with a large list of grants. Through kind of weeding those out, met with the CAO and some department heads about specific grant opportunities. We've kind of weeded through some of these and clarified some opportunities for some of these grants. We've missed out on a couple of deadlines through this process, unfortunately, and these are not the only grants that are out there. So feel no need to want to pursue any of them, or you could pursue all of them, or you could kind of send me back to the drawing board and look for some other opportunities if there are certain things that you're interested in. The first one on page 2 is the Lowe's Charitable and Educational Grant. Some suggested ideas for that would be a community garden or cleanup initiatives. Again, there's kind of outlined under the description certain applications that you can use this grant for. Those are just some suggested applications. Funding is generally from $5,000 to $25,000. There's an eligibility test that we'll have to pursue before they'll actually kind of submit the grant to you and be able to apply for that. The second grant on page 4 is the STEP Foundation. And this is a clearinghouse for a lot of different granting opportunities. You submit a proposal for one of the categories listed under the description. I've kind of highlighted or outlined reducing solid and hazardous waste on the first one as a grant opportunity. You submit a grant, basically, and they find a granting agency for that. So you come up with the idea and the funding amount that you would like to pursue. Potential applications for this grant include creating a regional detention pond for managing stormwater runoff or starting a recycling program at the local landfill. This grant and the previous grant have rolling deadlines, which is good. The third grant is an MDA block grant, and I know that the city has applied for one of these in the past, and you're probably aware that this is a very lengthy grant process. You have to be very specific about a goal that you'd like to have in mind. So if you don't have anything, that you're really geared up for, it might not be something that you want to pursue. This grant is rolling as well. The deadline is rolling. And then a fourth grant opportunity is the Coca-Cola beverage recycling bin. The grant deadline should be published very soon. It should be due in the fall. I just checked it this week and it's not up yet, but we could apply for beverage recycling bins throughout the city, either nice containers for downtown or for a community festival or event. They have a wide range of opportunities for that. So that's just kind of a brief overview.
Do we have questions, Richard?
I think the community development block grant you were referring to earlier was the Rock Hill Sewer Grant Extension, is that correct?
Right.
And that was a lengthy process, but it was definitely worthwhile. I was wondering, since you mentioned CDBG grants, if you've had a chance to meet with and talk to Phyllis Benson, who works for the Golden Triangle Planning and Development.
I have not about this.
She's
I
their
know
grant
she wrote
writer,
that
and her
before.
focus is on ARC and community
Uh-huh.
development block grants. So she would be an excellent resource to help you too on some of those.
Right.
Any other questions? Leah? Matt?
So for us to move forward with any of these grants, what would you need from us? And is it more appropriate for us to give some direction about specific items or have the CAO and the mayor do that?
I've met with the CAO and the kind of potential applications that I've written on each of these grants. That's kind of what we had come up with. If the potential application that we've listed is not something that the board wants to pursue, then you can feel free to give me direction on that or more specific ideas about what you're interested in.
Really, I would imagine then it depends on the grant as far as what you would need from us. Is that correct?
Right. I've kind of given a broad overview of the application for these grants, and if that's something you're interested in, then obviously we'll go back to the drawing board and kind of get more focused on what that application is.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Do we have a motion for her to pursue with some of these ideas?
Oh, yes.
BC, you have anything to say?
I always have something to say.
Well, I know that.
There are several of these, of course, that the recycling committee might want to take a look at to see whether or not they would recommend to the city pursuit of these things. And of course, city well versed on the CDBG. Richard talks about the one within his time frame. There have been a multitude of CDBG grants in the city
They're usually
over the years.
very prolific.
Leah, I would also be interested in talking to you maybe sometime after the meeting about the Lowe's grant, because I have been in contact with someone interested in developing a small corner flower park, in essence, like a little community park with some trees, shrubs, flowers, and maybe even a couple of benches with little tables like with chessboards on it. People can go up and play. So.
Anybody have any questions, other questions?
I was going to say, of course, Leah, we want to thank you for your efforts in this regard. Give us a little chance to talk about this and perhaps come with some better direction about areas in which the city might be interested.
Okay. I guess what I presented was kind of an overview of what some broader ideas and my knowledge about specific opportunities within the city might be more helpful coming from you.
Right.
If I could, we could meet, whatever we need to do.
It probably would be good for a work session of some sort, as
Get your
opposed
trash
to
committee together.
Okay.
a general board meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Leah.
Thanks.
Brings down consideration of approval of the animal control ordinance that we just finished up the public hearing on.
Let me go back to the thing.
We've got several of these that we're going to, after we've heard, that we need to approve.
Otherwise obtains an alarm system. So that allows for, obviously, the corporate entities to be a part of this and not be swayed by just the word person under that definition. Then under false alarms, the single user, it should be unlawful for the origination of a false alarm from any single user. And that tracks back to your language in the definition section. And then we went into the penalties. The failure or refusal of any person to comply with the provision of this ordinance shall subject such person to a fine. Any subsequent false alarm over and above the 3 false alarms that occur within the same calendar year. And we define the calendar year as being January 1 to December 31, as in that had been some point of confusion. The fourth occurrence may be considered without imposition of a monetary fine if there is proof of remedial action being taken to remove any defects or faulty equipment creating such malfunctions. And that's new language as well, allowing for the discretion of the hearing officer to make that determination when she hears the evidence. Then any subsequent false alarm over and above 4 false alarms will result in a fine on a per incident basis for the remainder of the calendar year, as reflected in the administrative fine schedule as adopted and published by the city and interpreted and implemented by the administrative hearing officer. And there again, that makes sure that they understand that she has interpretation and implementation, the exercise of that. And that tracks with the fine schedule, which y'all should have also in front of you, from the infrastructure committee meeting of yesterday. The fine schedule, false alarm commercial is now been reduced from 150 to 75, and that's on the 4th offense. The asterisks to include the paragraph at the bottom of the graph itself, which track back to her ability to waive the 4th alarm if there's remedial action that's shown to be taken. And the fine amounts are $75 and $150 for 5th and all additional under commercial, and then false alarm residential $25 with $50 for all 5th and all additional. That element was changed in the discussions from the infrastructure committee meeting, also to include the animal vaccination costs, which were included in that. So those were the changes that were made via the infrastructure committee's meetings.
All right, thank you. In summary, again, then, with this false alarm ordinance revision, the city is emphasizing the discretion of the administrative hearing officer to make determinations given the totality of the facts and circumstances on alarms that have been triggered and whether or not they fall into the category of false alarms. At least for the time being, the penalties for false alarms and false alarms over a certain number have been reduced. The police chief indicated that as a result of the board's adoption of his recommendation some time ago about the problem with false alarms, the need to reduce false alarms, police chief has indicated that there has been a substantial reduction in the number of false alarms, which cause problems with time and resources on the part of the police department. The infrastructure committee asked the police chief to monitor, as he does this matter, very, very carefully. Should the changes be accompanied by any increase in number of false alarms, then this matter will be very quickly revisited relative to the penalty schedule. So the committee recommends your approval of ordinance number 2008-6 relative to the ordinance providing for the establishment of fines, penalties, and false alarms within the city of Starkville, Mississippi. You have the ordinance reduced to writing in front of you. If requested, I'll be happy to read it. If not, I would move approval of the ordinance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the ordinance and the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Your last chance. Anyone else? Then I bring these public hearings on the cotton mill facility to conclusion. Vote. All those in favor, raise your hands. All those opposed? Jesus. It passes. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
We got to pay our bills, Mr. Mayor.
All those opposed? It passes. Thank you, Marquita.
Mayor, can I please ask for some clarification on the park and recreation bills?
Have they approved that?
Have they approved it?
Well, these are their payroll. They
Doesn't
only
matter.
meet,
They approved it?
no, they only meet, well, they approved it when they hired them. They only meet once a month. And their payroll goes out, or their concession workers, activity fund people get paid on Fridays.
When they approve their claim, you're authorized to cut the check. I don't want to be approving their claims on the P&R.
Okay, so are we saying that, that these activity fund workers, we don't need to pay them but once a month?
If that's all they meet.
I'm saying,
Okay.
you know,
Well, I just
they
wanted-
can make a blanket approval of their, of their claims if they want, say it's a standard payroll, but I'm not approving it.
Pretty much an annual adjustment in.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
Replacing ordinances as opposed to amending ordinances, but a relatively simple amendment to the ordinance, particularly concerning treatment of animals.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Brings us down to item B, the consideration setting a public hearing on the proposed budget and a possible increase in the taxes. What's the latest, Matt, that we can set that? We need to set that mid-month, this.
The recommendation is that with the municipal budget needing to be adopted on or around the September 15th, our fiscal year starts October 1, that we would propose to have our two budget hearings, the 19th of August, which is a regularly scheduled Board of Alderman meeting.
September 1st.
And then September, the first meeting in September. And so I'd move that we call for that public hearing on the proposed budget, as well as for possible increase in the municipal tax levy.
Do we have a second of that?
Second.
All those in favor say
Mr.
aye.
Mayor, Mr. Mayor, may I help be recognized, please, sir?
You may.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, let me just briefly say I got here a little early this evening for the 5 p.m. Budget session of this full board this evening. I just want to say a few things about this motion here, and I'm going to vote against this motion because I'm going to vote against anything that looks, smells, or walks like a tax increase. Well, let me give you a little history here on this this levy here, and of course, I want to make it real clear. I am a big proponent of infrastructure. I've been advocating that ever since I've been at this table. There's been a lot of waste in city government. The board has continuously, year after year, handed out money to external requests and outside agencies to the tune of $1 million or more. Well, let me give the history I want to mention. Back in September of 2000, that was during my second term on this board, and that was a measure that came to this floor. And the measure is to approve, enact, earmark a 1 mil tax increase. A 1 mil tax increase for roads in the annex area. And I was on the board and the only member at the table at this time when the city annexed back in October of 1998. The board had the annexation and almost doubled the size of the city. So that sounded good. So, of course, that seems to be the thought process that's prevailing in our municipality. So the 1 mil would allow for roads in the annex areas to be overlaid. So there was a representation made that the 1 mil would be used for nothing but annex roads. But ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what happened. In September of 2003, that 1 mil of taxes that was earmarked for annex roads lost its identity. It's lost its identity as being earmarked for annex roads. So what happens? It rolls over into the general fund. So when it rolls into the general fund, it gets spent business as usual. Now, just want to put this out there early. There's no guarantee if this board comes back and increase the millage that this money will be used solely for roads. It's just like the 0.85 mils that was there for economic development. That millage predated my time on the board. That it began prior to July of 1993. And in September 2005, that 0.85 mils rolled off that was earmarked for economic development purposes. It rolls into the general fund. So I support roads, and I want to say this tonight, so as we travel down this budget process, there are ways that we can cut the budget. There are ways that we can balance the budget. It may not be popular to eliminate some of these outside agency requests, external requests, but I only can speak for Alderman Perkins, and that's why I do my very best. And the bottom line is that when you have a responsibility, as I see it, I do and treat the taxpayers' money just like it's my own. I'm not going to give it out, and just hand it out and just spend it unwisely. If we would just eliminate perhaps, all these external requests, and one solution that I see that we have a proposed $500,000 ending fund balance projection, and the budget is being recommended by the gentleman from 5. And of course, we can reduce that ending fund balance down to about $393,000 to where we had it last year. We got 2% monies according to the CAO from our old 20% monies. That's when we first passed it. That we got about almost $200,000, better than $150,000 in that. And of course, I understand in talking with the CAO, there's some language in there that allows that money to be used for capital improvements. We got $500,000 for streets. We can add that 20% in. And of course, there's a lot of talk about the horse park. Support the horse park. It's good that they're here, but of course, the board has been given the horse park, at least $70,000. And in all honesty, we want to thank them for what they're doing, but that should be a self-generating agency. If not, another way we could skin that cat is the board could petition the legislature to revise this 2% formula. Whereas right now we get the 2% monies, 40% goes to the parks, 20% goes to Mississippi State, 15% goes to OCEDA, Economic Development Authority, 15% goes to Visit and Convention Center, and then we have another 10% that goes to the city of Starkville. And it's my recollection that 10% that goes to the city of Starkville is used for economic development. So if we would just cut out the outside agencies, perhaps we could keep the library, and that's have a big educational impact on the city. And I think we're under contract with the Humane Society, but we could cut out the rest of those. And of course, we've been very frugal in our spending. We've enlarged the bureaucracy with the people. Of course, we've been hiring, and we can cut back on some of the travel. And I think there was some mention about the department heads cutting back their budgets by 1%. And we still could get that money out, that 2%, from the old 2%, almost $200,000, and the 10%. There's some ways we can balance the budget, because I do not trust this measure of earmarking monies for roads. Now, we need roads. The roads are crumbling at the seams. The cost is going up. And this fiscal year, we didn't have much money to do many roads at all, but I think we can get by without a tax increase. It's just a matter of our just wanting to just take that initiative and ensure that we spend the taxpayers' monies wisely. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to share with my distinguished colleagues and our mayor and the general public about the history on this earmark funds. And I've been down that road in the past, and I don't want to go down that same road again, because I just don't believe that money's going to remain earmarked. If that was the case, if that one mills had remained, then when the board allotted that $200,000 per alderman from year to fiscal year before last, I wouldn't have had to spend $140,000 out of Ward 6 allotment for 2 roads to upgrade roads in the next area. So that money wasn't there. And it was represented to me at the time the vote was made that that one mill would remain earmarked. So I just wanted to give that background. And again, I want to make it sure that what I said, that I'm going to vote against this motion, because I'm not going to vote for anything that looks, walks, or smells like a tax increase. And this certainly at least does one of the 3. And I just want to say it respectfully, Mr. Mayor, and I really appreciate you allowing the Vice Mayor to have these few minutes of the floor, and I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for the history lesson.
Mr. Mayor.
Call, yes.
May I ask just a couple of questions, points of clarification, please, sir, after Mr. Perkins' eloquent history lesson? Mr. Cox, what's one mill bringing into the city now?
$170,000.
$170,000. Mr. Kemp, do you know what the road mileage is in the annexed areas, the quote-unquote annexed areas from the mid-90s?
I don't.
All right, how much does it cost to do a mile of road on overlay nowadays?
We just spent $500,000 on this past year, and we accomplished about 3.3 miles.
3.3 miles.
Around 150,000 a mile.
Okay, so I guess one of the points I'd like to make while I have the floor is that while Alderman Perkins' initial point is valid, that millage was earmarked and then rolled back into the general fund at some point, which can happen. I don't want anybody in the public to have the misconception that one mill from the city would have paid to overlay all of the roads in the quote-unquote annexed area. Not at today's prices, not at those prices in the early 2000s. It's not going to happen. He does bring up a good point. We do have a variety of infrastructure needs that should be addressed. Unfortunately, as he also brought up, we don't have the money to do that. We not only need to deal with roads, but we have other infrastructure needs, underground water, sewer, and everything, which Doug and his department have done a good job of mapping out those needs for the next 10, 15 years and working to identify various revenue sources, and they are at an advantage because of being a revenue department and various funding sources for them. But not only do we have that, but we also have the pressing building needs that continue to plague us that Alderman Perkins has spoken eloquently about at various times in the past, wanting to do something, wanting to move, wanting to do this, and yet he comes and says he doesn't want to vote for anything that looks, smells, or acts like a tax increase. I assume that includes any future proposed bond issues which would have to be done to accomplish the very things in which he continuously talks about and berates the rest of the board for not paying attention to. So when that's all said and done, this board needs to, in my opinion, devise a complete capital improvements plan which addresses water, sewer, streets, drainage, building needs. It needs to address potential funding sources for them. Doug's done a good job of that. Ed and Bill have identified costs for streets, drainage projects. Now the hard part becomes identifying those dollars, which, as we've heard, we don't have in our budget. We also need to do a good job of addressing our needs for buildings. We had Mr. Rook in here earlier today giving the court needs. The big thing he's talking about is lack of space here in this court, not only on court days, but for record retention, the safety factors that poses for a variety of reasons. Those needs need to be addressed. The police department is in the same situation it was at the beginning of this decade, when we had tremendous debate around that facility. We've tried various things that haven't worked out for whatever reason, yet the need is still here, and we still don't have the money to build it. The fire department, I don't want to leave them out. They need to build new fire stations for development as it goes around the bypass and the proposed annexed areas. Fire stations cost money. You got to put trucks in them. You got to staff them. We don't have the revenue to do that. And yet Mr. Perkins sits down there and says, I will not vote for anything that looks like, walks like, smells like a tax increase. I don't want to pay any more tax than anybody else. You know, I'm a low-paid state employee. I didn't get a raise this year. But if we have these needs, at some point we're going to have to be realistic and identify the needs, plan for the needs, and identify funding mechanisms. And it's going to cost money. We need to be real about that, or we can just sit back and let all these things crumble around us. Mr. Mayor, I yield the floor.
Call for the question? Yes,
May I have the floor for a moment?
if you don't take very long.
I won't take as long as these two gentlemen. No, I'm just going to make two brief points. Number one, I'm going to vote for this because, unlike Alderman Perkins, I believe that despite what you feel about the budget, or whether or not a tax increase may or may not be the appropriate solution to solving some of the problems in that budget, you still have a right to voice your statements concerning that issue in the form of a public hearing. I think doing this without providing a public hearing as a venue for y'all to provide your opinions on this matter would be an injustice. The other thing I was going to say is that I want to make sure that this public hearing is properly notified and published, because we had a budget meeting called, and it wasn't until afterwards that I learned that there was no public notice given, and I feel like that was unacceptable, and I don't want to see that happen again.
Call for the question here. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
We'll move on. Consideration of approving the proposed amendment to the sprinkling ordinance.
Mayor and Board, I've come to unite with the some proposed changes to our sprinkling ordinance that we adopted last year. And as with any document, it needs to be monitored and watched, and changes made as needed. And that's simply all we're doing with the ordinance today. We're trying to make it more user-friendly, more easily understood by the reader. If you follow with me, all we did was added a definition of cosmetic changes where we referenced it in the document on page 1. We just simply added a definition of cosmetic changes. That's what we're referring to. On page 4 of the ordinance, we added excluding porches, overhangs, stoops, and garages to the residential requirement. Currently, we require any residential home 5,000 square feet or greater to be sprinkled. And this, we've run into some issues where there was some confusion as to whether you included porches in your the square footage, and you do not need to include that. It just creates other issues. And so we've made that more legible and understandable. And then also we under storage on page 4, we added the exception of T-hangers that we discussed at the last meeting to include that. And then on the page 5, we took the wording
that has a value of out. We took that out and simply inserted which involves more than. When we used the word value, and that was confusing to some people. They kept going back to the money, and we were not referring to money, we were referring to square footage. So we took that out. So all in all this represents is just some cleaning up of the document and making it more user-friendly or more legible, I guess.
Questions from the board members?
Chief Mann, one question on page 5 on the remodeling and so forth. 25% of the gross square footage, you know, we're back there into porches, overhangs, heated and cooled area. What are we probably need to be specific here too. How do we define gross square footage is what we're getting at. Might need to put that in the definitions.
Yes, sir. Anything inside now, the problem that we run into on that, and we discussed that quite a bit, we actually had taken gross square footage out and put heated in, but some people, heated square foot simply means there's a HVAC vent in that room. And a lot of storage rooms, some people don't put them in there, and if it's not in there, I can't include that in the HVAC square footage. And a storage room is where a large number of fires occur. So we left gross in there, trying to keep the storage rooms included in the square footage.
I'm simply saying, should we add there also, as you are recommending on the residential 5,000 square feet of gross area, excluding porches, overhangs, stoops, and garages? Should there be anything excluded there? Because then the question is going to come up, all right, what do we mean by gross?
And we did talk about that, but we didn't want to, basically we covered it under H on page 4. It's not going to hurt anything to insert it there, I guess.
I'm not necessarily recommending that. I'm saying, should we, though?
PC, why don't you ask Ben if it complies with our position that we took relative to this issue coming up about enclosures and so forth, the definitions are consistent.
Which definitions?
You know, about enclosures, whether it's square footage and all that, we don't want to be in conflict with what our position that we already took with the court on.
The municipal attorney makes a good point in terms of question. Mr. Griffith, you remember earlier discussions about gross square footage and positions that the city has taken both in court and otherwise? Do these definitions comply or match or meet those?
Chief Mann and I think so. We've talked with several architects around town and got some input from them as far as calculating and figuring, the plans are submitted and what does or does not warrant sprinkling of buildings. So, I think we tried to get some input on that and make sure it was clear, because it's, the last year, or last 6 months, 8 months, how long it's been, the same questions kept popping up. And when we sat down to address it, we tried to get some feedback. And we think that what's been proposed tonight adequately addressed, because that's some of the feedback we've received from some of the architects that we've talked to that submit those plans.
And gross square footage simply means the square footage inside the outside walls.
What we're talking about, Chief, what he's asking you about is, we had an issue that came up about a year ago.
Okay.
That we had to go to court on. And we want to make sure that the definition that you're using for this doesn't conflict with another one that we have in another part of the code that talks about, that we've already had, that this board has already taken a position on. That's the only thing, I don't mean to speak for Mr. McLaurin, but I believe that's what he's asking you, is that he just wants to make sure that you and Mr. Griffith are in agreement that there's no conflict between this change and what the code says relative to gross square footage and heated and cooled areas and so forth. Is that?
Yes, that certainly is part of what I'm getting at. That plus, bear with me, Chief, on sprinkling of residential, 5,000 square feet gross floor area, but excluding. All right, but then when we get over to remodeling, then we talk still about gross square footage, but don't exclude those same things we included in the, essentially, the building.
But again, there's only one definition in the building code of gross square footage. And Ben and I have talked quite a bit about this. And I'm assuming, Ben, that is the square footage or the gross that we used in the case that Mr. Favor is referring to.
The gross floor area is defined as within the walls.
Right.
And that's the reason it may be misleading is when folks throw out a number of however many square feet a building is, the question always arises, is that the floor area, is that under roof, is that heated and cooled?
Or is it the outside dimensions of the building?
Exactly, outside as opposed to the inside dimensions. So if you feel like the gross floor area is...
That would be the inside dimensions of the building.
Yes, sir.
So I guess to answer your question, Mr. Favor, then it is what you were referring to on that case.
That's the position we took on that particular case, was it not?
I was not a part
Mr. Griffiths?
of that.
Yes.
It was, and I think specifically we refer to usable area, because in that particular instance, there was a carport. And again, this definition, the way Chief Mance defined it is excluded. So we think we've accommodated and covered everything, especially for the last couple of months and talking to several architects, because when they provide plans, one of the things we ask them to show is the square footage and calculation of what exactly we're looking at. And that way we can understand what's being shown and how spaces are being used, both from a fire protection standpoint and building code standpoint.
All right.
We have a motion.
Attorney Favor, does that meet with your satisfaction as well?
That's fine.
Well, I didn't have any issues with the wording of it, so Mayor and Board, I'd move approval of the amendment to the sprinkler ordinance.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Let's show of hands. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Mr. Perkins, how'd you vote?
Yay.
That passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Board.
Next item is, we approve this of the electric vehicle. Consideration of making an appointment to fill the unexpired term of Larry Cohen, who most of you know passed away. And we have Mr. Johnson, who made application for this. Been previously the director, I believe, for the last 20-something years of the housing, public housing thing, and is retired from that and is asking approval to be put on the board. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, we approve him on the board. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The next item is consideration and acceptance of the uniform assessment schedule for the fiscal year. Pertains to automobiles.
And state law requires this adoption, so I would move acceptance of the State of Mississippi's uniform assessment schedule for the fiscal year 2008-9.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah. Do we have, who seconded that? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Brings us down for the financial agreement. The last time we had this before us, that was for 5 years. We can't afford to pay it 3 years, for 3 years. And this is the rate for 5 years. And you're still under state and under the best situation is not Marquita. Do I hear a motion? We approved it once.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor show hands, please. All those opposed? Okay, it passes. Ed, this brings us down to a briefing real quick, about 3 sentences.
Or fewer.
I've been asked to brief the board on the situation we had over the weekend. Of course, everyone's aware that we had a severe windstorm and a lightning storm, and it really kind of resulted in a lot of outages pretty much citywide. We had mostly lightning damage, particularly in the downtown and southern part of the city. And on the north side of town, we had a major circuit to actually go to a lockout position, which shut off the power feeding the Reed Road, Garrett, and Hospital Road section. The Hospital Road portion was the side that the Starkville Manor Nursing Home is located. After several hours, we finally found the problem and got the circuit back on. And most everything else was due to, other outages were due to the lightning and the strong wind situation that we had. We've gone back through and over the last several months, and we've been trying to address a lot of issues that we have found, particularly on the north side of town. Of course, now one is that we have gone through and we've actually finished the job there at the hospital. And the telephone company finished up as of yesterday. We're waiting now on TV cable to go in and relocate their facilities. Once we do that and finally finish out in that area, it's our intention to try to go down on South Montgomery. And we've got approximately a half mile of underground line that we're going to put in that will be between the Huntington Park and the Belmont subdivisions. With this line, it'll actually provide us some additional circuit capacity down on the South Montgomery side, and we're hoping to have that done with at least by the end of October. We have also been looking at the north side of town, especially on the Reed Road side, where we're going to try to rework the corner of Reed Road and Garrett and try to improve some line loading conditions in that area. We have also in the past week had a engineer team to go through both the Colonial Hills subdivision and the Rolling Hills subdivision, and we're looking at replacing a lot of poles that are either damaged, wind damaged, or lightning damaged, and we're going to try to get those replaced and hopefully give us time to do some other projects before we can go in and actually improve those areas to a further degree. We've had some problems with that circuit out of the north-west substation that actually feeds down the Reed Road and on the west side of Hospital Road. A lot of it's been due strictly to trees, so we've also had some tree trimmers over in that area, and hopefully we've got most of this situation cured. South side we're putting in a lot of lightning protection and some animal protectors. So we hope that'll take care of a lot of things, especially in the areas that the homes are in the power lines are in the back side of the home's property, such as in Timber Cove and Colonial Hills and those areas.
Yeah, that took 3 paragraphs, not 3 sentences. How close are we on the electric building, getting the bids?
I talked with the architect today. He hopes to be able to have plans ready within the next 2 to 3 weeks to go out for bid. We're still going to have to probably go to the site plan review committee, which we haven't done as of yet.
Make sure your stormwater's in good shape. Thank you, Ed.
All right, thank you.
We'll take a small recess right now. Ed?
I just wanted you to know that the electricity was off in Ward 7 too. I just didn't make a big issue about it and make you come before the board.
And Ms. Self, it was off in Ward 3, part of that.
Okay. All right, Ben, how are you tonight?
All righty, sir.
After being put on the spot 2 or 3 times, go ahead.
To start.
We have 2 items this evening. The first one is for Dr. Starr's dental clinic, and as y'all know, last month Dr. Starr came forward with a request asking to be able to use part of his clinic for occasional overnight use, which required a conditional use approval as an accessory to his dental clinic, and y'all approved that. After went back to his contractor and reviewed the plans that were submitted to make that space usable, which when it first came in was going to be developed in the future. It was as the construction progressed is when he decided he wanted to use this, how he wanted to use the space. The requirements to sprinkle the building have now kicked in, and Dr. Starr has decided that he doesn't want to sprinkle the building and utilize that space. So he's asked that it be withdrawn, and that he won't use the space for residential use. And my request to the board tonight is to rescind the approval, just to clarify and clean up an approval, so there's not an approval hanging out there in the future that not Dr. Starr, but say a future owner could, find out and go, oh, well, I can use this, and just start using it, and the building's not been built to accommodate that. So this is really just a cleanup of change.
Changing circumstances.
Yes, sir.
But they will be able to use it for a conference room, just not.
Absolutely, and we've already had discussions with the contractor, and he is building out the site or that portion of the building, and he's moving forward with that. I believe right now if they haven't done so already, they're probably putting drywall up. So that's about where they're at as of last Thursday or Friday. So this is really just to kind of clean up what we have, so there's no loose ends hanging out there.
Then, so moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Next item, Ben.
The second item is regarding the site plan review of the Starkville Pediatric Clinic, which Mr. Henson spoke about earlier.
But this is a different matter.
This is a different matter.
Yeah.
This is the pediatric clinic. Mr. Henson spoke earlier about the stormwater ordinance, and Mr. Henson represents the Starkville Pediatric Clinic LLC, which is in the process of undergoing a site plan review for a new office located at 200 Hospital Road at number 5 Professional Plaza. And they have a lot, which is the last buildable lot on that street, and in the undergoing the site plan review, Mr. Henson is proposing the use of a hammerhead turnaround for fire trucks and also for sanitation trucks. Had several meetings and discussion with the fire department, and basically the hammerhead, the turnaround issue is allowable per the NFPA for the fire department vehicles, also for the sanitation department vehicles. So it will accommodate that use. However, our current subdivision regulations only permit the use of a cul-de-sac. And because this is the last site on this street, there's not room to accommodate the cul-de-sac with the 50-foot radius. So his designer has come up with a hammerhead design, what we call a hammerhead. Some people refer to it as a T design, with dimensions that will accommodate the fire truck. And Chief Mann has gone out and tested and tried this, and of course, if the fire truck can make it, the sanitation department vehicles can make it as well. So,
With the biggest fire truck that we have?
with the biggest fire truck that we have, yes, sir. So, that being said, that is an item, the cul-de-sac is required, the hammerhead will accommodate the use, and that is an item that the department heads, the Development and Review Committee cannot approve because it's not allowed or it's not called out specifically in our regulations. So we're presenting that to the board tonight to get guidance and direction on that for this project, and also to consider that y'all give us some guidance if that would be an allowable use on upcoming and future projects as well. And just as a side note, and I think I included in the memorandum to y'all, that we've had discussions internally about our subdivision regs, and these are a hammerhead type turnaround is one of the things that we've talked about, and there's a lot of standard literature and material out there that allows these uses, and that's something that will be incorporated into those regulations in the future.
I would move then that the board authorize the use of a hammerhead turnaround on this particular development, and further that the city's building codes be amended at the next meeting to allow consideration of hammerhead turnarounds for future projects.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, board.
Office of the City Clerk. Request approval of the City of Starkville claims docket.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The next item is engineering and streets.
Good evening again, Mayor and Board. First item is a roadway dedication as part of the Carpenter Place subdivision. If you look on the second to last sheet, third sheet from the back, there's one section of roadway that was not included in the Carpenter Place plat that's currently privately owned by Mr. Charlie Morgan. And there's a roadway already built that connects Star Avenue to the subdivision. This roadway should have been as part of the Carpenter Place plat, but was not. Mr. Morgan is offering this as a roadway dedication that meets the city's standard specifications for road construction and is necessary to connect to the existing development. In addition to that, there's an easement provided on the section of roadway that accesses to the west to Louisville Street. That will be a permanent easement until it is accepted by the city, which will occur at a later date.
Mr. Engineer, I may have misunderstood you. Does that road currently comply with all city codes and specifications?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was built according to the city's specs. And
We still have the Highway 25.
yeah, we still
road.
have that section of roadway that will remain private until they come in with a final plat. Two different roadways. One is on the Academy Place side. That is the portion that they are wanting to dedicate. The other entrance, which accesses to the west, which goes to Louisville Street, it's going to remain private, yet they're offering us a permanent access easement until the time when they want to dedicate that roadway to the city.
You know, when all this, and we've been dealing with this some 6 or so years prior to your coming, the main thing that was agreed upon in all that discussion and litigation that occurred was that there would be an entrance to Highway 25, not just the Academy Road entrance.
They have built the road, and they are unable.
Built what road?
They've built the road to old Highway 25.
All right.
It currently meets city specifications with the exception of the final asphalt layer. However, that portion of property has been approved for a preliminary plat, but hasn't been approved for a final plat. So if we accept the road, that portion of the road.
The whole thing was a PUD development.
But those portions of the roadway were not a part of the final plat that was just approved. So essentially, what you have right now is a subdivision that's landlocked with no public access.
Mr. Griffith, can you shed any further light on this?
Yes, sir, you're correct, that was part of the PUD, that the road that, from the ditch, from Hollis Creek
Right.
to Louisville Street. Mr. Morgan went ahead, he built the culvert and he's constructed the road. I believe the utilities are in place, just like Edward said. I understand that the surveyor is preparing a final plat. It'll be brought forward, I understand, in the next couple of weeks, if not the next month or so. I've seen a preliminary sketch of that final plat. Mr. Morgan was required, I believe, as part of the settlement, he was supposed to construct that culvert and that road, I want to say at 2/3 or 75% of the build-out of the subdivision, and he went ahead on his own initiative and built it at the front end to use it as a construction entrance off Highway 25, Old Highway 25, as opposed to off Academy Road and down through Academy Village to the subdivision. So he did that at the front end as opposed to at the tail end like he was supposed to. So he sped it up. And when that preliminary, or when that final plat comes forward, probably in the next, I want to say in the next month, 2 months, I'm not sure exactly what the schedule is, that road will be dedicated to the city just as all the others are. Right now, there is an easement to allow use, and it is heavily used.
Why the need for this approval at this time?
It was a condition of the final plat because there's no public roadway that, basically you have a set of public roadways in the Carpenter Place subdivision, and you have a set of public roadways that the city owns, but there's no connection between them currently. I mean,
Well, the PUD required both of those things, I thought.
I'm not.
Mr. Griffith is shaking
I'm
his
not-
head
It
affirmatively.
did. And this is the final steps in order to get those roads become publicly dedicated, maintained roads, as the code requires.
Well, it gives the, one of the two roads public dedicated.
So basically what he's asking, why is he not coming forward with the whole thing? And what's the necessity of doing this without doing the other, the whole thing?
I guess the other portion could be dedicated to the city, but they also have to do the final plat as well as part of that. And Mr. Morgan was holding off on dedicating that portion of the roadway until he did the final plat for that adjoining property.
So what would be wrong just waiting until the whole thing's presented and then we accept it at that time?
Nothing, except that a condition of the final plat was that they prepare and bring this to the board for dedication within 60 days of the final plat recording. So we could provide that public access. But if you'd like to see both sections of roadway at the same time, we could wait on it. That's what suits you.
Is there some urgency here?
Just that the city doesn't own or maintain or control those roadways.
Can we go up there with a fire?
Can we? Yeah.
We
don't
could,
have the road.
Doesn't matter.
Theoretically, there's nothing that stops that individual
Right, with
property
new
owner
state law,
from.
he continues to own the roads anyway, doesn't he?
That, he could go block the roads if they so chose to do
Do
so,
what?
since they
Some-
own them and it's private property.
I doubt if he wants to sell things in there
Right.
that he's gonna block roads.
No, he's
Well-
gonna do that.
Again-
So what's
again,
the pleasure?
theoretically.
I mean, you know,
And so when we approved their plat, we said, come back within 60 days and dedicate this area to us. And so now they've come back and they're wanting to dedicate the area to us, and I don't understand why we wouldn't go ahead and accept it.
we'll make a motion.
Wouldn't mind doing that, subject to the Highway 25 connection. That was part of the POTA.
Well, that's forthcoming, is that not right?
Subject to it being
That's one of the main entrances,
also
actually, that we'll have, is 25.
Yes.
Is that correct?
The road is already there, the box culvert is built. All they lack is the final asphalt lift on the
And we have an
road.
easement on that road as well. The easement is granted to the city in lieu of the dedication because that's what's coming into our plat.
Right. Oh, I would move then approval of this dedication of the roads that you, the Star Avenue entrance and so forth, subject to the ultimate dedication and approval of the Highway 25 connection from the developer, which you say is forthcoming,
Yes.
okay?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, let's go to the next item.
Second item is a request from Mr. Shelton Jones, and they are wanting to realign their sewer as part of the Henderson Ward Stewart improvements. Put the sewer now within the city's right-of-way and under the pavement. It's attached as a sewer plan. This is caused by, they did not get an adequate survey on the front end and have discovered that the proposed route is unfeasible due to grades. So this is their alternative.
And Ms. Self, I would just note parenthetically, it's a good thing you and I never went on with the sharing of the paving of that road at that time, is it not?
I think you're right.
Do we have a motion here? School's paying for all this, is that right?
Yes.
And the
And that-
refixing the road?
They will bring the road back up to its existing condition. They'll provide any repairs to insufficiencies that they do to the to curb or storm drainage.
We have a motion.
If we had problems in the future and they had to go back into the road, is that the same thought process of?
The city would take over and maintain the sewer. It will meet the city specifications. Since it will be within the city's right-of-way.
Constructed totally at
Schools
there.
at
Yes.
their expense?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I move approval of the Henderson Ward Stewart School construction and improvements with the city right away.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye, please. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Next item.
The last item I have for your consideration tonight is authorization for the mayor to execute an agreement with CCJJ LLC for subdivision improvements and repairs. CCJJ LLC is the entity that is developing the Carpenter Place subdivision. And we consulted with our city attorney and per his recommendation, and with his help in drafting this document, would provide for a contract between the city and the developer in the case that, for whatever reasons, his letter of credit is what would you call it, is released or is no longer valid, that he would still be liable for doing any remaining improvements or repairs to damages caused during construction.
Is that Charlie Morgan that we're talking about?
Yes.
This is basically, we developed it with all our working
Ms.
together.
Poole will not do the same thing, basically.
She did.
Okay.
This is basically, we developed a format to put in place for contracted developers down the road to allow them to not have to post bonds and so forth, because letters of credit are only for certain periods of time. And this allows them to operate with letter of credit, and this also creates individual liability for those developers should they not follow through on doing the final layer of the asphalt as they're required to do once the roads are dedicated to the city.
Do we have a motion?
So this will be a standard that we'll use with.
Yeah.
This is what we use at we've all had our input, and this is what we come up with as a standard format to use.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. I believe this brings us down. Did I skip anything to executive session?
Mayor and board, approve approval of the consent agenda as enumerated.
Yes.
Would you like me to enumerate
No.
it again?
No, please. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. This brings us down to executive session. Do I hear a motion? We go into a closed session to discuss executive session.
That's good. So moved.